Good evening, everyone. I request Club President Rotator Samuel Pawar to do self-coloring.
Meeting call to order.
Thank you, President. Now I request Rotractor Nikita Yolkar to take the four-way test.
I request everyone to unmute themselves and repeat the words after me. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do.
Of the things we think, say, or do.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it
build
goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotractor Nikita. A very warm good evening and heartily welcome to all the members and Rotractors present over here. I, Rotractor Radhika Mahindrakar, along with my co-host Rotractor Aditya Mane, welcome you all on behalf of Rotract Club of Unity. We all have gathered here to get enlightened on topic navigating mental health and emotional well-being by our chief guest. I consider it a great honor to welcome our chief guest, Tanya Mangwani ma'am, and I request Rotractor Aditya Mane to introduce our guest. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Rotractor Radhika. Good evening to one and all present here. I, Rotractor Aditya Mane, Club Professional Development and Community Service Director. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's session, Tanya Mangwani ma'am. Ma'am has a postgraduate diploma in expressive arts therapy from Women's Christian College and East West Center for Counseling, Chennai, India. Ma'am has done Master of Arts in Counseling for Mental Health and Wellness from New York University, New York. She is a Bachelorette of Arts in Psychology from Ferguson College, Pune. About work experiences, ma'am is a visiting faculty for St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, where she designs the curriculum and teaches a specialized class on using the creative arts in counseling for master's student, and also she is a consultant psychologist. Ma'am was an affiliated psychotherapist, secondary schools counselor, integrative psychotherapist, and child psychologist, where she provided individual and family counsel to young adults, middle school, and high school students. Also developed and taught curriculum on mental health, bullying, and mindfulness for middle school. Ma'am has also volunteered for many organizations. Ma'am has been awarded as winner of the Bernard Katz Award from Applied Psychology Department, New York University, New York. It's our immense pleasure to have you, ma'am, to guide us. This event is in collaboration with Rotract Club of DYP IMR, Rotract Club of Indira College, Rotract Club of Delhi South Central. Thank you all the clubs and we welcome you all. Now I request Rotractor Omkar Pandit and Rotractor Krishna Rajput to felicitate Tanya Mangwani ma'am. Thank you, Rotractors. Now I request Tanya Mangwani ma'am to enlighten us on today's topic. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, you can share your screen.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, can everyone see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think I have about 30 to 40 minutes to talk about this, and then we'll have a question and answer round. Yeah, though if anyone there's no clarity on one of the terms I use, or you have a very specific question about what I'm talking about, you can always feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. And I will be sharing a lot of resources from my own experiences, from my clients' experiences, as well as from research and science. But it would also be great if you feel safe and comfortable to also share your own experiences. Right? So maybe if I'm talking about a particular story or a particular resource and that resonates with you, feel free to just unmute yourself and share what you would like to share. Yeah, Yeah, so my topic in specific is navigating mental health during the pandemic. And I thought it might be important to focus specifically on the pandemic because it really has taken a toll, I think, collectively on everyone's mental health. I don't think there's a single person who has not been affected by the pandemic on an emotional level. Yeah, but before we go there, I would just like to take a few minutes to walk you through a grounding exercise. Yeah, so this is just to help you center you and put the rest of your day aside so that you can be fully present with me when we are talking about these issues. Yeah, so if you feel comfortable, you can just sit in a comfortable position with your feet firmly on the ground. Yeah, and if it feels safe, you can close your eyes. If not, you can just lower your gaze. Just begin by taking a deep breath in and out. In and out. And as you continue breathing, gently bring your awareness to the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the way your belly expands as you breathe in and deflates as you breathe out. And as you continue breathing, gently bring your awareness downward towards your feet and the contact they are making with the ground. Notice the weight of your body against the chair and the ground, and allow the chair and the ground to support you as much as you need. And as you continue breathing, gently bring your awareness upward towards your legs, your thighs, your sitting bone, and your back, and the contact they are making with the chair. And as you continue breathing, gently bring your awareness to your hands. And notice the way the texture of your clothes feels against your fingers and your palms. And when you feel ready, you can slowly start to make your way back and open your eyes. Right? And that was just us taking a minute to center ourselves, right? And make sure that we leave the rest of the day behind so that we can be fully present in this moment. Yeah, and maybe you can just take a minute to check in with how you are feeling at this very moment. Right? What sensations came up as you were following along my words? Maybe you noticed some tightness or tension in your body. Maybe you noticed some coolness or some heat or some lightness. Yeah, so just taking a second to check in and see how you're actually feeling in this present moment. Yeah, and that's actually one of the first things we talk about when we talk about self-regulation. And because self-regulation is especially important in a very stressful time. And the first step to really begin to regulate yourself is just by acknowledging and labeling your feeling, asking yourself, how do you actually feel? And I think a lot of people think that, oh, that's extremely easy to do. But I found through my clients that actually it's not easy. Most of us, when we're asked, how are you feeling? We usually say, good, we're feeling bad, we're feeling okay. right? But it's really difficult to tell, okay, I'm feeling helpless, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling frustrated, right? To actually begin to label those feelings. You can see through the emotions wheel that emotional vocabulary is extremely rich. Right? And that's not something we really learn as kids growing up. So for most of us, it's extremely difficult to put into words exactly how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way. Right? And research has continuously shown that that is actually the first step to helping yourself feel better. Because if you don't know how you're feeling, then how do you know what to do about that feeling? Right? So it helps to just check in with yourself, locate that feeling in your body, and then comes the next step of, okay, how do I regulate the feeling? Yeah. Right. So I thought it might just be important to start from there of what have we actually been experiencing during the last year and a half during the pandemic? Why has it taken such an emotional toll on us? Right. And something I saw come up again and again for myself and my clients and just the people around me is a lot of increase in anxiety and stress. And that's been because of the chronic uncertainty of the pandemic, right? We don't know when this is going to end, if it's going to end, what life is going to look like after the pandemic, right? There are a lot of unanswered questions there. And we also don't know when, usually in our life, all of us have experienced periods of uncertainty, but they usually have a cap, right? So we're able to say, okay, this is a period of uncertainty, but then I'll have more certainty once this happens. But with the pandemic, it's not been the case because we really don't know when we're going to have more certainty or if we'll have more certainty, right? So it's just that constant feeling of dread that's being played out over and over. And obviously, everyone has different responses to uncertainty. Some of us tried to, at the very beginning of the pandemic, a lot of the people around me tried to consume the news. They went into overdrive, finding out every single information they could about the virus, right? Which ultimately, to a point, is not very helpful because that is just fueling our anxiety and stress. And on the other hand, there were people who completely avoided even thinking or talking about what was going on. Right? So all of us have our ways to handle uncertainty. Some might be healthy, some not so healthy. Yeah, but I think as humans, it is difficult for us to tolerate uncertainty. We like our life to be predictable. It gives us a sense of safety, right? We like to feel that we are in control. And when that's taken away from us, we go into overdrive trying to cope, right? It activates our parasympathetic nervous system. It sends us into a flight or fight response. So our body is just continuously in that state of fight or flight it's being flooded by stress hormones, right? And that works well if the threat is more short term, right? So if there was a tiger in the room and our parasympathetic nervous system kicked in, then that gives us the energy to run away or to fight. But if it's a threat that is just continuous, constant, like prolonged, then it just leads to exhaustion, just emotional exhaustion and burnout. Yeah. Another thing I think all of us have been experiencing is grief and loss. Right? And for some of us, it is full blown grief that we have lost people close to us to the pandemic. But all of us are experiencing loss on some level. It's a loss of normalcy of the life that we have been living up to this point, right? Loss of all the elements in our day that we had to look forward to. It could be very simple, like just knowing that you could go to work or to college every single day and see your classmates. And now we don't know, okay, when is college going to reopen? When do we get to go back to work? Right? So it could be loss in terms of deaths, but it's also loss on many other levels. Loss of the plans that we had for ourselves. Loss of everything we wanted for our future that got that the pandemic got into the way of. Right? Loneliness and isolation. I think this is pretty self-explanatory of having to isolate ourselves. And human beings, when we're feeling that sense of threat, stress, and anxiety, we very naturally gravitate towards our social connections for a sense of safety. Right? And what happened here is that the pandemic took away one of the main resources that we had, our main ways to cope, right? Being able to lean on other people for support. We couldn't see other people we couldn't interact with them at least face to face. Right? So that also really took a toll on people. Yeah, I think I spoke about emotional exhaustion and burnout, but I think that also comes from a lack of boundaries. Right, that our days were very structured before the pandemic. We had very clear temporal boundaries and very clear spatial boundaries of, okay, now I'm going to work, now I'm coming back, now I'm going to maybe a restaurant or a bar to be with my friends. Right? And now we just have to experience everything in one house or one room. Right? Those boundaries start to get really blurry. Yeah, and now that we spoke about what we have really been going through on an individual level and a collective level, I would want to talk a little bit more about what we have found is helpful with all of these difficult feelings, right? So one thing I did mention is just labeling and acknowledging the feeling. Many times when we're facing a really difficult circumstances or difficult feelings, we have a tendency to run away or even suppress these feelings. But it's extremely important to constantly check in with yourself and see how you're feeling, right? And finding some way to validate it, finding some way to acknowledge it. If, okay, I'm feeling all of this, and even if I can't do anything to change these feelings, I acknowledge that it's really hard on me, right? So, and this could be by just checking in with yourself. It could be by having conversations with someone you really trust. It could be through journaling. A lot of people find it really helpful to write down how they're feeling every single day. Right? So a practice that I suggest to my clients very often is to find a time in the day, maybe before you're going to bed and you have some free time, to just check in, okay, how am I feeling right now? How have I been feeling through the day? Right? And what is causing those feelings? So just taking the time to write that down. And this also works well if maybe for whatever reason you don't have a strong support system, you don't have anyone you can talk to your feelings about. It's just finding a way to acknowledge it and let it out into the world so you're not holding on to it. Yeah. And another big thing that has helped is creating a structure, a routine. Right? Because like we spoke with uncertainty, it helps to have things that are predictable in a time of uncertainty. Right? So I may not know what is going on with the pandemic or the world, but at least I know what my day looks like. And that's also in my control. Right? I may have small rituals that I look forward to every day. And this is also something I often speak to clients who have anxiety issues or mood issues. And it really helps for them to have something to just anchor them, something to hold on to, so that those temporal boundaries don't blur into each other. There's a way to demarcate the day, right? It's to say, okay, now it's time to rest, now it's time to work, now it's time to spend time with family. Right? Because I think what we've also been seeing is a lot of burnout, that people are constantly working, and their employees also expect them to be constantly working because they're from home, because they're working from home. And it's often, okay, what else are you doing? But stress, rest is also equally important. Otherwise, you will end up completely burnt out and you won't be able to give it your all when it comes to work or college or anything else. Right? So just finding a way, it could be a very simple ritual. I know for some clients, it means wearing work clothes during the weekdays, and then wearing more comfortable clothes during the weekend. Right? And they don't really have to wear work clothes because on Zoom, you can get away with anything, but it's just a way for them to create that boundary. Right? Or it could be a small ritual of, okay, every single day at 7, I'm going to go for a walk. Or when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm going to do is meditate or journal or make breakfast. Right? So just something to give your life a little bit of predictability and something to look forward to. Yeah, and with that also comes focusing on what is in your control. And this happens quite often where I will see people who focus continuously on things not in their control. And what happens is they end up ruminating, right? They get lost in thoughts, they get completely overwhelmed by stress and anxiety. Because if we're only focusing on things not in our control, then we're left feeling extremely helpless and powerless, right? When actually we may not have control when it comes to a lot of things, but certain things are within our control. So when you start to ask yourself, okay, what is in my control, what is not in my control, and then focus on what is in your control, that's what gives you some sense of power. That's what gives you some sense of agency, right? So then you don't feel completely stuck and powerless. Yeah. Right. So I think we also spoke about drawing boundaries along with routine, right? And rejecting the shoulds. And what I mean by that is we often have a story in our head of how things should go, right? So I think all of you must have experienced this, that you talk to friends or you look at social media, and a lot of people are extremely productive during this time. Right? And that's when you really start to beat yourself up of, oh, I'm really struggling during this time, but I should be productive. I should be using all this extra time to get all of this done. Oh, is that a question? No. Okay. Yeah, but everyone has their own path and their own process. Right? None of us respond to the same event in the same ways. And it's really about accepting that, because it's important to put this into context that obviously when you're going through such a difficult time, it's difficult to be at your best. It's difficult to be really productive, right? So it's about meeting yourself where you are and accepting how you're feeling about it, accepting where you are, accepting that your level of productivity won't be the same as it would have been if these were normal circumstances or if you were feeling better. Right? And that also goes hand in hand with practicing compassion and kindness towards yourself, not beating yourself up or expecting yourself to respond to situations in a certain way, but really accepting however you're feeling and wherever you're coming from. Right. And we started the session with a little bit of grounding and breath work. Could someone, if anyone feels comfortable, could they share their experience with that? What was it like to do the grounding at the beginning of the session? How did it leave you?
Ma'am, could you please repeat because you were lagging while saying the last sentence?
Yeah, does anyone want to share? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was saying, how did you feel during the grounding that we did at the beginning of the session? What did you experience and how did it leave you feeling?
Well, yeah, for me, it was really refreshing. And as you talked about connecting with every part of your body, I eventually connected with every part of our body and felt that kind of sensation throughout my body and felt really good. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Can you share a little bit more? What sensation did you notice? What was
Uh,
helpful about it?
it was like that happy realization kind of moment that we eventually tend to forget things or take granted. It's about kind of things. So there were many flashbacks going on in my mind during where I was thinking about a lot of things and eventually connecting with every part of my body.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I know that it's not soothing for everyone, so it's okay if you had a different experience. But really, the logic behind grounding is exactly what I think Aditya said, right? That we're constantly thinking about things in our head. And in our head, we can time travel essentially. We can think about the past, we can think about the future. But what happens when we really bring ourselves back to our body, back to our breath, is that we're anchoring in the present moment, right? So no matter where your mind is, your body is always in the present. So that can be really helpful, especially if you're prone to anxiety or stress, or you tend to overthink quite a lot. Just bringing yourself back to your body can be quite a relief. Yeah, and how you do that is just by focusing on your breath, right? It could be by what I essentially walked you through was focusing on parts of the body that are in contact with the outside world. Yeah, it could also be through the five senses, right? So noticing a particular smell, noticing a particular taste, noticing sight, what is around you. Right? So that can be quite helpful to just bring yourself back from all the thoughts, stress, and worry. Another thing that I think most people know about is that exercise really boosts well-being, right? It releases endorphins and it just boosts your overall mood. But at the same time, it also helps you regulate anxiety and stress. And something I think a lot of people were experiencing, at least at the beginning of the pandemic, was that they would go to the gym or they would go to classes. So it was difficult to figure out ways to exercise, considering that we couldn't meet other people or even get out of the house at that point. But I also think that that exercise is especially important, not only when it comes to physical health, but also mental health. Right? And again, exercise can also be grounding. It connects us to our body, it connects us to the present moment, and it takes us away from all the thoughts. Yeah, and finding ways to re-energize yourself. Right? So something a lot of clients came in saying that they were feeling extremely exhausted, extremely burnt out. And something they found helpful is just paying attention to what is exhausting them. Right? So at what moments do you feel your energy depleting? And for a lot of them, it was Zoom calls, right? Especially if you're working and you constantly have to be on Zoom all the time, it can be quite exhausting, right? Or just the fact that there are no clear demarcations and boundaries and you're working all the time. So just noticing things that deplete your energy, and then on the flip side, things that energize you, right? So, and for everyone that is different. So I might feel energized while reading, another person might feel energized while cooking. So essentially finding things to keep ourselves busy, right? Because it's not healthy to be distracted all the time. But there is also a balance there, because it's also not healthy to be constantly thinking about your feelings and obsessing about what's going on. It's a really finding a balance there and finding activities and hobbies and moments in your day that energize you. Right? And social connection is another thing that I think most people know, right? That it's really vital for our survival and our well-being. And that was largely taken away, especially during the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that's when people got a lot more creative of, okay, how do I make sure that I'm still maintaining all these important relationships, even if I can't see them face to face? Right? And that could, anyone want to give an example? Anyone try anything creative during the pandemic as a way to just remain connected to the people who are not around you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, did someone respond?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, during the time of pandemic, in the beginning of the pandemic, like I mostly did cooking and all stuff.
Mm.
Also, like talking with friends on like video calls and all.
Right.
Yeah, those are the things because we like everything was locked down and
Yeah.
nobody was out. So like mostly we spent time with our my family and while cooking and making some food for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Anyone else want to share something? Okay, we can move on then. Yeah, and in the end, I also wrote cultivating hope and gratitude, right? Because it's extremely important to acknowledge it, all the difficult feelings that we are going through and not ignore them or cover them up. But it's also not helpful to get stuck there and constantly think about those things, right? It's equally important to take a step back and see all the things that we do have and savor all the things that we are grateful for, or things that are going well, right? And I think that however terrible things are around us or however terrible the world is, we can still find something to be grateful for. And it doesn't have to be something major, it could just be a very small thing, right? Of even, okay, I'm grateful that I have a cat because she helped me during the pandemic. She made me feel less alone, right? Or I'm grateful that I am healthy and I don't have COVID. Right, so that there's actually a lot of research done around gratitude, and it does show how even a simple exercise like listing down 3 things we're grateful for every day has lasting impact on our well-being, right? And this is a very simple exercise that all of us can do, but it's shown to have positive impacts on our well-being even a couple of months after um, people have stopped doing that. Yeah, and even with hope, and I think a lot of the time, especially during the second wave or even looking towards the third wave, something that's kept a lot of people going is hope. Right? What do I look forward to once this is over or whatever that means, but what can I look forward to on the other side, right? Or even hope in the present moment of seeing stories where people have really helped other people or shown a lot of altruism, right? Or just feeling or looking towards our healthcare workers. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess just checking in on time of how much time I have, because I know we started a little late.
We have time about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. And then question and answer, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so what I really wanted you to take away from the workshop is also tangible tools that you can use in your daily life, right? And I will be sending more resources across. But I just thought it might be helpful for you to reflect on how some of the things I've been talking about are applicable to your life, right? So I do have a few reflection questions. If you want to take some time to just think about it, you can write it down if you have a piece of paper and a pencil close by. But I would love it if all of you, if you feel safe and comfortable, to just share with the rest of the group, right? Because I am sharing, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm sharing resources that have worked for me or my clients or things I've found backed by science. But it would also be wonderful to hear what has really worked for you, right? And I think that really helps the group as well. So we have a bunch of collective resources. Yeah, so my first reflection question was just one aspect that has been particularly difficult during the pandemic. And you can take a few seconds to think about it. And if someone just wants to share, that would be great.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
For me, ma'am, most difficult perspective will be not be able to meet my friends. I have a habit of being surrounded around people all the time, and that one day they said you can't go out. That's the most difficult part.
Hey. Yeah, and did you find ways around them? Were you able to connect to them in different ways through technology or any other way?
Yes, ma'am. We used to play games online and video chats.
Hey. Does anyone else want to share? Should we move on to the next question?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to share.
Yeah.
For me, during the pandemic, I was working. So the difficult part for me was not giving time to my family. Because whole time, like as you said, they were like घर पे कुछ और काम तो नहीं है, तो work for more 2 hours, work for more 3 hours. So the time which I was giving to my family working from the office, the time was totally taken by the office work when I was working from home. So I think that was the difficult part for me.
Hey. Yeah. Did you find ways to draw boundaries, or is that still happening in the present?
No. I just left the job recently, but at that time, only Saturdays and Sundays was the time which I spent with my family, and I regret that because only 2 days I was with my family, and the rest 5 days I had to work completely.
Hey. Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of my clients coming in, especially working in the IT industry, they just had, their employers had just unrealistic demands from them. They thought that because they're working from home, they should be working just crazy hours. Okay, so one aspect that anchored or grounded you or gave you the energy to keep going. Does anyone want to share?
Ma'am, for me, it was stock market because that time it was a great fall in the market and it was a great time to invest the money. So that gave me a lot of energy and lot of enthusiasm and passion to
Great.
be into the stocks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think one thing that really anchored me was the fact that I could still spend time in nature because I live in a space that is fairly green, and then not a lot of people. Right. So, in spite of everything, I felt extremely grateful to still be able to get out by myself and be around nature. Right? And especially having that as a ritual that, okay, I end work at 7. So at by 7:15, 7:30 every single day, this is one thing that I can look forward to, just being away from my screen and being around greenery. Yeah. Yeah, if no one else wants to share, one aspect that gives you hope during this time, right? Because it's, and I wrote it in present tense because I think a lot of us, things are better right now, but a lot of us also looking towards the third wave because the second wave has been quite horrific. Yeah, so what is giving you hope right now?
Ma'am, I think for collectively, I could answer a collective answer for the second part also that eventually gave me energy and also the hope that my family was around me, despite of the fact that all the terrible news has been coming and we were hearing all the, you know, the number of cases has been rising all over the country. But still, we eventually most of us had our family together. We were spending ample amount of time together, discussing things,
Right.
and then that is like some of the ray of the sunshine in all the dark times. That one thing was holding all the hope, holding all the energy together, and eventually giving all the energy to move forward, irrespective of the all the facts that is happening around. We got to move on with the life. We have to
Right.
do our things, and yeah.
Right. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm assuming that would be an answer for the next question as well. One person that has been a source of support, your family. Yeah, does anyone else want to share what gave you hope during this time or what is giving you hope during this time? And I think one thing that I have been hearing from the people around me is this was while the Olympics were going on, and we saw a lot of pro-social behavior of people really being kind to each other, people lifting each other up that maybe wasn't around in such a strong way during the other Olympics. I think for a lot of people that gave them hope of, okay, maybe we're actually changing as a society. We're learning to lift other people up instead of just competing. Okay, one person that has been a source of support during these times. Would anyone like to share?
I think it's not just a one person, but it's our family who has been there with us for 24 hours during this pandemic.
Right. So it's not just one person, but it's the entire family as a unit. Okay. One thing you are looking forward to in the future.
Offline colleges.
Right. Any idea when that's starting or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Offline meeting friends and bunking college lectures.
Right. Cool. And the last one is one thing you can take away from this workshop and add to your coping toolbox. Right? Anything that I mentioned over the last few minutes that stayed with you and you think, okay, this is something maybe I can inculcate into my life. And just as a refresher. And just as a refresher, this is some of the things we've been talking about.
I think this pandemic has been taken a huge toll. I'm sure on everybody's overall mind, thought processes, well-being, their mental health, even in the physical manner.
Yeah.
So that self-compassion, as you talked about, self-care, self-compassion, being in connect with your all your senses, being connect with your body, acknowledging the facts around you, staying connect with your family, and acknowledging even little things that matter to us. We over the period of time, we eventually take some things for granted and regret after some time that we should have done that, we could have done that.
Right.
So even acknowledging that little things also matters, and there's still hope, there's still ray of sunshine, that eventually all these terrible things will go away, and we'll definitely see good days ahead, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to talk about? If not, I guess we can just move into the question round. Yeah, okay, then I guess we can just stop here.
Anyone has any doubts or queries can ask or put it in the chat box.
Okay, ma'am, I have a common question on behalf of everyone. As I talked about you that we are, MBA students right now, and we have our exams coming up, and also we have our internship and job process. All the, suffering stage is gonna come up.
Right.
So, is there any, coping mechanism or in it little tricks and any other techniques that we can use to cope up with all the stress? Stay focused. Be connect with our work and forget all the distracting things. I must you have had clients that were college going students. So, if you could share any experiences or any tricks.
Yeah. Can you tell me what about this experience feels stressful? Is it about juggling so many things at once?
Yeah, that too.
Right. And yeah, I think a lot of what we just spoke about can apply, right? What really helps with stress, with anxiety is not ruminating on things we can't control or worrying too much or getting into that overthinking drive, but it's really about bringing ourselves back to the present moment and taking it one step at a time, right? Because what happens when we have a lot of things going on, it's you're working on your internship, but then you're worrying about your class assignments, and then you're also thinking about your exams because we just have so many things going on in our lives at all points of time. But what helps more is just taking it one step at a time and focusing on what is in your control, right? So if my main cause of concern is my exam results, that's not in my control. What is in my control is how I study, how I prepare for it, right? So just learning to refocus of, okay, I'm not going to worry about my results because that's not helping anyone. I'm going to instead put my energy and time into preparing for my exams, right? And again, like I spoke about, just breath work, grounding exercise that also helps with focus and attention. Right? So it's making sure that we're fully present for whatever we are doing. Because at the end of the day, if you're worrying about 100 different things, you're not going to be able to be fully present. You want to give it your all while you're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, ma'am. Thank you. Anybody has any questions? They can also put it in the chat box. Okay. I think we are done with the questions.
Okay. I don't know if you did want me to address this, but a common question that I do get is, these are strategies that help with mental health and well-being, but how do I know if something more serious is going on and if I might need professional help? And this is just a question I get all the time. I don't know if it might be helpful to answer that.
Yes, ma'am, we can go ahead with that.
Yeah, and I think that there is no clear-cut answer because you don't need a disorder to really seek professional help, right? You don't want it to come to that point when you're in a crisis mode and nothing is helping, and that as your last resort, you're seeking professional help. You want to catch yourself earlier, so in that way, it's also easier to deal with it when it's at a 2 or 3 rather than when it's at a 10. But some signs that might tell you that you may need support from the outside is just if it gets too much. Some people are just overwhelmed all the time. They're consumed by feelings. They find it extremely difficult to regulate thoughts and feelings, right? And to the point where it gets in the way of you living your life. Right? So you may not be able to function in college, may not be able to function at work, you may not be able to maintain healthy relationships with the people you care about. And yeah, so those are definitely some of the warning signs where you feel like it is getting in the way of you living life the way you want to live it.
There's also taboo, attached to it that if you go to a psychiatrist, or if you even want to consult with a person that can help you, but in the society we live in, unfortunately, there's this taboo attached to it that that particular person is considered as mentally ill.
Right.
And in fear of that, many of students and many of eventually all the persons fear to open up even to the closest of their person. So yeah, that's the thing, and this is everywhere common in the society.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. There's so much stigma around it.
Yeah.
Right, but I think the way to start breaking the stigma is to start speaking up.
Yeah.
It is easier said than done. But if you're in that space where you feel comfortable enough to talk about your mental health, then maybe if you start talking about it, your friends will also feel more comfortable to start talking about it.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, we'll move ahead.
Okay.
So now I would like to thank our director, Dr. Meghna Bilare ma'am, and associate director, Dr. Vishal Vadaskar, for their counsel support. And now I'd like to request Dr. Radhika to propose vote of thanks.
Great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks this evening. First and foremost, I thank our special guest Tanya Mangwani ma'am for giving excellent coverage and letting us know regarding mental health and emotional well-being. It was very informative session. I'm also grateful to Club Advisor Rotractor Abhishek Patil sir, our President Rotractor Thanmal Prawar, and PDD Rotractor Aditya Mani for constant effort for making this event successful one, and also for organizing such events that add up to a piece of knowledge. Lastly, I would like to thank all participants for showing interest and making this session a successful one. Thank you, one and all.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
so much, ma'am.
It was a great session, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.